So Dennis Prager just got back from his 5th trip to Australia, and he arrived from the airport 10 minutes before his show. He'd just flown straight from Sydney, Australia. And the first thing he talks about is how shaken he is at the death of Andrew Breitbart. He says, I was shaken on a human level, on his family level, at how young he was. Andrew was just 43. And for the whole cause of conservatism in the United States. And the left has a lot of Breitbarts, but we don't. And Dennis says he's going to a private memorial service for Andrew, and says he wanted to take Andrew's 4 kids and hug them and say, your father was a great man. Dennis knows George Gilder has taught me he lost his father during World War II. His dad was shot down. Said his dad was always alive in the family and in his mind, and that a boy having a father he loved and admired is infinitely different from a boy who never had a father. So if you lose a father at age 4, you'll always have had that dad. And this is James Q. Wilson, who died at age 80, is another loss. I was very close to James Q. Wilson. He says, I don't think I've ever met a more elegant man than James Q. Wilson as a red trait. Felt like you were in the presence of both a good man and a distinguished man. He was just so sophisticated. It's why I often call myself a WASPophile, WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And Dennis says, I used to collect stamps, I collect pipes, cigars, CDs, but the biggest collection I've always engaged in is that I collect good people. Dennis calls the Sydney Opera House one of the most famous landmarks in the world, up there with the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty. And talks about a story about taking in a performance at the Opera House, and Dennis, his wife, and about 30 other people stood and applauded out of an audience of around 2,000. Australians don't tend to stand and applaud. There's kind of a British reserve among Australians. Americans, by contrast, are much more open, much more friendly, much more warm people. So if you get too enthusiastic in Australia, I remember I'm from Australia, and we'd say about people, oh, he's raving like a Yank. So this woman called in, American woman who lived in Australia for a few years. And she says, Australians are very reserved and timid. When I lived there, I had to change my own enthusiasm. When you're enthused about something, Australians shut you down. Even when you're feeling good, they make you aware of how you speak. When you live there as an American, you have to tone yourself down. I cannot be myself. Dennis says that every taxi driver he had in Australia, except for one, did not talk. In America, usually you can't stop taxi drivers from talking. Talking about the Republican elections in 2012, the race for president of the United States. And it's notes a lot of Republicans, such as George Will, are pretty glum and say we should give up on the presidency, just try to win the House and the Senate. This has to be one of the most all-time stupid things that George Will has ever said. Like, sometimes his emotions get the better of him and overwhelm his reason. If you give up on the presidency, you're going to give up on the House and Senate, because if Republicans are dispirited about their presidential candidate, they're not going to get out there and work hard for their Senate and House candidate. It doesn't work that way. That's why many Republicans have endorsed Mitt Romney. They believe that of all the Republican candidates, he has the best chance of winning. Dennis Prager says it's wrong for Republicans to be in a funk about the presidential race. You get in a funk if you lose, not before. Republicans have a moral obligation to act spirited, even if they're dispirited. It's infectious in a bad way. It's very easy to be down.